Hi, I'm Jen, and welcome back to the Daily Dose. Today we're going to discuss freedom and God's forgiveness. And to do that, we're going to look at Romans 8, verses 1 through 2. It says, "There is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. For the law of the Spirit of life has set you free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death." When I first read that, the first verse is kind of cliche in modern times. You see it on cups, you see it on mugs. There is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. And so I feel like we need to stop and examine to say, what does that really mean? Because it could go a couple of different ways. First thing we must ask is, why is it there for? What is it there for? And so it's referring back earlier in the passage when Paul's wrestling. He's saying, what I want to do, I don't do, and what I don't want to do, I do. And so there's this internal wrestling that Paul's going through. But he's talking about how now, because of the Spirit of life, he has been set free. And so there is therefore no condemnation for those who are in Christ. When we are in Christ, we don't have to feel this overly burdensome weight and this obligation to pay back because we've done something wrong. Christ has come and made peace with God, as Paul talked about earlier in chapter 5. Christ has come and we are now at peace with God. The penalty for our sin has been paid by Christ. Therefore, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ. So there is nothing that should inhibit us to coming to the Father because it's all been wiped clean. There is nothing that we can do that is beyond the reach of Christ. So therefore, there is no condemnation for us. On the other hand, some of us can read this and say, there's no condemnation in Christ. I can do whatever I want. And it's a license to go ahead and live according to the flesh instead of according to the Spirit. And I think we need to be cautious in that as well, because Paul says elsewhere, do we just go on sinning so grace can abound? No, we do not. And that's where the second verse comes in. For the law of the Spirit of life has set us free in Christ Jesus from the law of sin and death. So we've been moved from sin and death to the Spirit of life. And in life, we don't just freely sin just so grace can abound. We obey and we walk in faithfulness to Christ because we love him. And it's this relationship of love that causes us to desire to be like Jesus. And so there's no condemnation, meaning we can run to the Father, not inhibited by our sin. And I think that's just great news.